do you want to perhaps just begin a discussion, any commentary on that?
I'll just offer a few comments if I could, because I think they were, two terrific presentations galloping through, 300 years of Russian history and this terrific presentation by Teresa. Let me start by saying that as regards, whether Russia is part of Europe or not, most Russians would agree with you, sir. If you survey Russian opinion on this question of is Russia Europe or something else, I mean, obviously Russia is both Europe and Asia. I mean, that's absolutely clear. Yes, 2/3 of the population concentrated in European Russia, traditionally defined as to the Urals, and probably 1/4 to 1/3 of the population east of the Urals. In fact, that percentage is falling. It's a great worry to Moscow that Siberia and eastern Russia are depopulating. Eastern Russia, should we say east of Lake Baikal, has lost 15 to 20% of the population since the fall of the Soviet Union. And this is really where most of the resources are concentrated. So that's a great worry to Putin. But as I say, I think most Russians would agree with you that Russia is neither Europe nor Asia. Russia is Russia. There's an interesting correlation here between political attitudes. The more liberal you are in terms of supporting reform, economic reform, political reform, the more likely you are to stress Russia's European cultural affinities. The more conservative you are, or if you like, the more radical you are in terms of nationalism, the more likely you are to argue that Russia is unique. And Teresa quoted, to my mind, the worst cliche about Russia in the Russian language, which is Russia cannot be measured in any conventional way. Russia is beyond human understanding. You cannot understand with your mind. In Russia, one can only have faith. Well, this is, of course, mumbo jumbo. We can't understand Russia with our minds. What can we understand? But it encapsulates a very common Russian view that Russia is unique. And that is a view which is, I think, exploited very effectively. But it's a deeply held, sincere belief by many Russians. So I just wanted to make that point. I think I take your... On the question of the Russian language, it is an Indo-European language, and I think if any of you have tackled it, or you do tackle it, you'll find if you've done French or German or Spanish, it'll be a great help to you, because the grammar of the language is undoubtedly Indo-European. On the other hand, I agree with you too, sir, that it is a difficult language. And here, the nature of the language supports your point about Russia being unique, because there are all manner of concepts in Russian which reflect its politics and its history, which are very difficult to convey in English. And the link between the Russian language and what you've seen with these two presentations is really very important. Let me illustrate the point. There's a number of English words which simply don't, or concepts, that just don't translate into Russian. Conflict of interest. I've checked this with many native Russian speakers, and I say, no, a new generation of Russians, the post-Soviet generation, young people who've traveled in Europe and studied abroad, they understand what it means. And in Russian, the word they've come up with is clash, in the sense of an actual collision. Stolknovenie. Compromise. The word compromise in Russian, for most Russians, does not carry the positive connotation it carries in English. Compromise is a defeat. Now, that's changing. as attitudes are changing with a new generation. Enlightened self-interest. I defy anyone to translate that. Enlightened self-interest. It simply can't be done. And then in Russian itself, you have key concepts which really don't translate into English. The Russian word for state, государство, actually means kingdom, or that which belongs to the king. That which belongs to the king. And so Russians don't have, they're acquiring it, the Western notion of property. Property comes from the state. It is given by the state and it is taken away by the state. And that's really how Putin rules. He divides the property among the people whose loyalty he needs, and he secures that loyalty, and very effectively, it seems to me. So many Russian reformists are saying Russia can't really move forward until we have firm property rights. And I think they're right, because more educated Russians have emigrated in the last 3 years than at any time since the revolution. And many educated Russians stash their wealth and their children abroad because they're worried about it. And as a Russian deputy finance minister said, what Russia exports is oil, young women, and future Nobel Prize laureates. It was when two Russians won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 2010 at the University of Manchester, and they were asked by the BBC Russian service, will you return to Russia? They said, under no circumstances. Their answer was significant. Too much bureaucracy, too much corruption, and too much idiocy. So, as I say, the other thing I'll mention, the language, Teresa and Eva would know this well. Russian has a concept, volia, which is usually translated as freedom or liberty, but it doesn't mean that. What volia means is it's the untrammeled exercise of the human will with no inhibitions, be they from God or be they from the government. And many Russians really believe that Putin, no matter what his faults, is really the best man for the job because, and they believe, and Putin I'm sure believes this, democracy is bad for Russia. But if you introduce democracy, what you'll get is volia, and that will lead to chaos, and history teaches that in Russia when you get chaos, you get bloodshed on a massive scale. So there's no doubt that Putin's popularity is declining. But Russian history, I think, has made many Russians deeply pessimistic. Most fundamental change will mean things get worse. There's an old Russian saying, what is the difference between a pessimist and an optimist? An optimist thinks things can get worse. Worth thinking about. Worth thinking about. Another couple of other matters that were raised. Just quick. Yeah, we've got 3 minutes. No? The very important point about infrastructure, I thought the discussion was very useful about ships. I mean, to this day, there is not an all-weather road linking Vladivostok and Moscow. Putin claims there is. I can assure you, it's not an all-weather road. To this day. And if you look at a map of Russia's infrastructure, you'll see it's all concentrated west of the Urals. Then you get this huge blank. It's a very important point, and the Chinese claim they have an expression for Russia. They say that Russia suffers from big country disease. It's simply too big to be governed effectively. And I think this is something Australians understand well. Western Australia would probably like to become sovereign, you know. So, that's an important point. The values gap was raised, and I thought that was really very important. Just very briefly, a couple of other comments. You saw Mr. Deripaska being lectured to by Mr. Putin, giving him my pen back sign here. I thought that was a terrific image of the way Russia actually functions today. I would take the view, I would assure you that Putin is the Tsar. He's the Tsar. He routinely keeps people waiting, CEOs of big companies, 2 hours. And whenever he appears before a foreign guest, he's got an entourage. Ministers, deputy prime ministers. It's a way of demonstrating that he's the Tsar. And when senior Russian visitors come to Australia and encounter the prime minister with a single advisor, they simply, they're dumbfounded. Final point, Medvedev had no power. He was nominally president. Putin had the power. In Russia, Medvedev was commonly known among the people as Chupa Chups. Chupa Chups is a little lollipop.
Yeah.
And the Russians would say, Medvedev achieved 3 things. He changed the clocks, which he tried to change daylight saving. He changed the name of the militia to the police, Polizia, and he kept the seat warm for Putin. Finally, will Putin retire? I don't think Putin can retire. The only way Putin can retire is if someone gives him a rock-solid guarantee that he will be safe. And you saw him there in that terrific shot that Teresa gave you with tears in his eyes when he had the acceptance speech. My suspicion is that Putin really believes that he could be overthrown. And there are only 80,000 people in the streets, really, out of a population of 140 million. Yet the reaction of the Kremlin was clearly one of genuine concern. So I think he really does believe that he could be threatened. And if he retired, who was going to protect him? So what will happen to Vladimir Putin? Probably even Vladimir Putin doesn't know. I'll be talking to you further this afternoon.
Thanks very much indeed for our speakers.